Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, I'm Tristan Riddell.
And I'm Lee Hutchison.
And welcome to the Senate floor.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hi there. As you'll notice, Matt Hansen isn't joining us today. He's too busy screen capping Captain America Civil War to find the right desktop wallpaper of Captain America and Bucky Barnes. So I've had to call upon Tristan Riddell to fill in for him today, and thankfully he's accepted this challenge. How you doing, Tristan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to be on Filibuster. I think I was only on Filibuster once before, or I can't remember if you were on Senate floor with these names. It's so hard to keep track.
On the Senate floor with you, and then you and John hijacked a filibuster to talk about how great America was after you kicked out the Brits. So, long memories here in the UK.
Yes, it is. It's Matt, beloved Matt. His life is getting so crazy right now, and you've all been updated on his life. He's going to law school because he has a genius analytical mind, and it deserves to be in the law because we need more good guys in the law, and we applaud him here that he's doing that, but sometimes it cuts into his sitting around time.
And exactly. So we've decided that we're going to have a wee little podcast session together, filling in for young Matt. And we thought, well, what could we do today? We batted around some ideas, and Matt's being a young professional learning law, we've decided to regress to our teenagehood and look at the movies that really inspired us as teenagers, perhaps got us into movies, got us into a certain director, and look at those movies that really were inspirational in our teenage years. So yeah, I think this could be a good discussion, and one that'll make me feel young and hip, or really upset that I'm not 16 anymore.
Yeah, this was a very interesting exercise for me, because when you came up with this topic, because you texted me the other day, you're just like, what about this? What about this? And this one just resonated with me because, our teenage years are our formative years. It's kind of where we experiment on who we are and what we like and what direction we want to take. And I mean, yeah, that happens in every, phase of your life. I'm not trying to argue that, but there's something special about your teenage years where you don't really know who you are. You don't know what you're into. You don't know what type of people you're into or what type of friends you want to have. And so like when you experiment with types of movies where you're like, oh, okay, do I want to watch a teenage comedy, or do I want to watch a horror film? You're like, I don't really like horror. Should I go to drama? Well, that made me sad. What do I do now? It's just your emotions go up and down like crazy as a teenager. And so you gravitate towards different types of movies.
Yeah, and I definitely get the teenage years as well, that when you're younger, you kind of are, a prisoner of what's on the TV, what your parents have got on video. You don't really have the disposable income to go off and buy all these new movies, to go to the cinema on your own and check out movies. So I really think when you get to those teenage years, the world opens up, that instead of seeing maybe a couple films a year or whatever's on the TV, you now have this entire catalogue out there that you can access, that with the money, with the freedom. And I think there's definitely something to be said that around those ages really do influence your film taste for the rest of your life.
That's really interesting, because I didn't really think about that till you said it, where you're kind of constricted by the environment you're in, and the parents that you have and their video collection, because that's so true. Because I started thinking about the movies that really influenced me, and I started thinking about like, oh, It Happened One Night, and Witness, or 10 Commandments, Indiana Jones, and everything like that. And I started thinking about, I was like, wow, these are all movies that my parents bought and showed me, and that I was in love with. And then I realized I was very much following my parents' taste when I was a young kid. But then when I started getting older, like 12 or older, that's when you start going out and getting your own things, or spending your own money, or going to a friend's house and watching movies, like watching their collection. Now, with you growing up, this was a relatively new thing when I hit 12, but our public library, I don't know how it is where you are, but our public library had movies. And so you could check out a movie like you were checking out a book.
Yeah, we didn't really have that. I grew up in like a small village, so it was even worse for me. That I always remembered, and it was one of my favorite memories as a kid, that when I we'd have to rent videos really from Blockbuster. We had Sky, which was like the cable network here in the UK, but we'd have to travel like 20 miles to the nearest Blockbuster. Jeez. And we'd always make it like a kind of family event that we'd go to the Blockbuster, rent a video, then we'd get a Chinese takeaway, and then we'd drive home. But like with all the brand new movie releases, those were only like 1-day rentals. So you would have to go back the next day to drop the Blockbuster video off before coming back. So you'd be almost doing a 60-mile round trip just to rent a video. So living in the countryside could be quite constricting when it was like getting access to movies. It could be really tough.
Oh man, that's insane. Like, it definitely makes me feel like I took my ability to go to the Blockbuster down the road for granted, where like it was a 3-minute drive to the Blockbuster. But did that enhance the experience for you, or did it just make it detrimental where you're like, oh, we got to drive, or did it make it like an event for you where you really treasured that movie?
It could be a bit of both. Sometimes it could be really frustrating. If there was a movie out there that I really wanted to see, I could be like, oh my God, I really want to go rent this movie. But I could be kind of held back by like, oh, we're not going today. Like, you know, my parents don't want to have to do like a 60-mile round trip over a weekend to go rent a couple of videos. And like, it was the same with the cinema, that the cinema nearest to me was about like 35 miles. And it was so frustrating to be able to kind of I'd just be able to have to go see what my parents wanted to see or what my parents were willing to go along and see. And I always remembered, it was just so frustrating that the most movies you would see in a year at the cinema were probably the big blockbusters. I remember seeing Speed 2 and Star Wars movies, Lost in Space, various movies like that. So when I got to my teenage years, and this seems like a good opportunity to dive in, I remembered like I was always a huge James Bond fan. And I remembered Tomorrow Never Dies came out when I was 10 and I was too young to go see it. So that whole summer, Christmas, when it came out, I was devastated that I couldn't go see this Tomorrow Never Dies. My parents were like, no, you're too young. And this was before the 12A, before parents could take you to see it. And I remembered one day like thinking, it's going to be now 20 miles away as opposed to 35. I think I've got a good chance. I think one of my friends is maybe going to go this weekend with their parents and they're going to take me, and they weren't going in the end. And I'm not a religious man, and I remembered sitting in my bathroom crying, just like praying on a Bible, like, please, I really want to see Tomorrow Never Dies. Can I please go see Tomorrow Never Dies? So God never spoke to me, and then I became a staunch atheist from that moment. But and I can even remember like really wanting to see Lost in Space, the movie. I'd got all the toys when I was in America, but my parents was like, oh no, it's we can't go this weekend. It's too far away, or we've got plans. I remember just crying away like, I really want to see Lost in Space. And so I remembered when Die Another Day came out, that it's a pretty terrible James Bond movie. I think it's enjoyable, ironically, but that was like a huge influential movie from my teenage years, that I was around 16, 15, maybe 15, and I was old enough to go travel to Aberdeen myself on the train. So I'd take the like 45-minute journey into town, and I was so excited that I could go see a James Bond movie whenever I wanted. And I think I saw that movie like 3 times at the cinema. I was so excited that I had this opportunity to see it as many times as I wanted. I could go anytime I wanted. No one was holding me back. It was rubbish, but I could see it, and that was to be taken advantage of.
Well, hopefully by the time Casino Royale came out, maybe that's how God spoke to you. I don't know. Maybe.
Yes,
maybe.
Exactly.
But that's really funny that you bring up Bond, because that's at the top of my list too. Like, I'm looking at like movies that were influential on me in my teenage years, and the first thing that came to my mind was Bond franchise. But, you know, like much like you, I'm sure, like growing up, you know, when we were wee lads, as you would put it, you know, we had Sean Connery, we had Roger Moore, you know, we had Timothy Dalton, we had all those movies growing up. But once we became teenagers, or right around that age, or maybe a little bit younger than that, that's when Pierce Brosnan came on the scene, and that was our Bond. Like that,
yes.
Like GoldenEye on. That was like, Bond was always very special to us and to me, and Sean Connery is of course amazing, but Pierce Brosnan was ours. Like, that was our time. And so for that,
Absolutely.
Pierce will always be have a very special place in my heart. And I felt the same way. Like, once GoldenEye came about, and I definitely didn't see that in the theater, but my dad, my dad let me watch a lot of stuff when I was younger, and he was always good with the fast forward button, as you know from our Batman commentary. But like, yeah, he'd show me all the Bonds and Tomorrow Never Dies and Die Another Day, and I know I'm missing one. World Is Not Enough. Oh God, these were just so horrible movies. Like,
I think World's Enough's pretty underrated. That was the first Bond I ever got to see at the cinema, so it's got a place in my heart. That I remembered my dad took really unwell during the film, or so he claims, and he left the room, and he never came back till the end of the film. So I'm just sat there in the cinema myself, like, oh my God, it's a James Bond film finally. That I'd received my redemption from the Tomorrow Never Dies experience of sobbing in my toilet. So what would be like another film for you then? What was another film that played like a key role in young Tristan's development as a teenager?
Well, I think to focus on like pure teenager, not just a franchise that carried over from childhood like Star Wars or Star Trek, which we can get to later, but one movie that really kept coming back was 10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay.
I loved this movie, still do. I think this is such a great movie that, you know, it's a modern day retelling of Taming of the Shrew. It starred Julia Stiles when she was still, you know, like hot on the scene. One of Heath Ledger's first roles, and a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, it's just filled with so much talent, and it was just comedic genius. And I really liked it because I was one of those pretentious kids who always thought he was, you know, much more mature than the rest of his friends or the rest of his class. And so when I saw 10 Things I Hate About You and saw that the characters were treated like adults, even though, like, not like in the world where, you know, like, of course they were still told what to do and they still had to go to class. But the thing is, the storytellers, the filmmakers treated the characters like adults, and it's shown on screen. And I had a friend, a platonic girlfriend, where I would go over to her house like once a week and we would watch this film. Like, we were both just obsessed with it. So when I think of this movie, I think about, you know, like being 13 and going over to my friend's house and just like eating just a gross amount of chips and watching this film and thinking like, oh, these kids are cool. These kids are quote unquote grown up. And like, I want to talk like that. Like, I want to, you know, like I want to take life by the cojones like they do. And, you know, looking at it now as an adult, you're just like, these aren't grown ups. Like,
I remember the first time I ever saw that movie, and I think I've only ever seen it once, was we used to have like day trips with our school from the countryside all the way down to where I stay now, Edinburgh. And it's like a kind of 4-hour bus journey. And we used to come down like school trips to go see the rugby. And we got to watch like movies on the bus because it was a long journey. And I remember that was one of the movies, 10 Things I Hate About You, on this like small tiny TV right at the front of the bus. So like if you're halfway down, you're squinting to even see what's going on. And I don't remember much of it, but I do remember thinking like, this is actually kind of cool. I thought I was like the same as you. I thought, I'm too cool for this romantic comedy. Get it off, get something else on. But it was surprisingly enjoyable.
Yeah, I think you should give it another shot. You should like it, the
definitely.
Blu-ray's out. Like it's I think it had like a 10th year anniversary edition, and I picked that up immediately. But what about you? Like, what helped you? Like, it doesn't even have to be a teenage romance. It doesn't even have to be a teenage movie.
Yeah.
But like, what really affected you growing up?
I always remember seeing Royal Tenenbaums at the cinema for the first time.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how I got in my head that I wanted to go see this movie. I wish I knew. I don't remember the reasoning, but I always remember I went with a friend of mine from high school called Fraser. And we were out one Friday night at like some sort of school event, and I went, I'm going to go to Aberdeen tomorrow to see the Royal Tenenbaums. And that was kind of a thing we would do when we were younger, when we were kind of that high school age. We would go into Aberdeen for a day, like get a Pizza Hut, see a movie, come on back. It was just kind of something to do. When you lived in the countryside, there was little else to do with your friends. So I remember getting in my head, I'm going to go see this movie, Royal Tenenbaums. I hadn't seen any other Wes Anderson films at that point. And we went along to like a Saturday screening, and it was practically empty, the cinema. And I remember just watching this movie and just being blown away. It was one of these movies that, like, that's what kind of ties into what I said earlier, that you're so tied into what your parents want to see, the big movies or the ones that are kind of staples of your childhood, your Star Wars, your Indiana Jones, that you don't really have a chance sometimes to see these smaller movies, these niche movies, and like they open up an entire world to you. And just, I remember being blown away by the performances, the characters. It was so quotable. I think Gene Hackman was incredible in this movie. And it was like one of these movies where, like, that was me hooked into Wes Anderson. and then it would open up other worlds. Like, right, who is this Wes Anderson? Like, what movies has he done? Then I would dive into Rushmore and Bottle Rocket, and then I was there for Life Aquatic, and then I was like, oh, who's this co-writer Noah Baumbach? Oh wow, he's done this movie Kicking and Screaming, and then I would watch that, and it was just one of these ones. It was like seeing a brain come to life, that you were just seeing all these different pathways open up that you never had the chance to before.
That I am so ashamed that I love Royal Tenenbaums. It's my favorite Wes Anderson film. It is amazing. Everything that you said about it is absolutely 100% true. It is so great. It is such a great movie. And I was so ashamed because I didn't see it until college, until like well after it came out. And I saw Life Aquatic first, and I was in love with that movie, but for some reason I didn't connect that with the director. Like it was I don't know, like it was Life Aquatic came out in 2004 or something like that, so that means I would have just started college, so I was technically still a teenager, and so I got really into that, and then I started dating the girl, and she says, "Oh, if you like Life Aquatic, you're gonna love Royal Tenenbaums." And I was just like, no, Life Aquatic's amazing. And then she showed it to me, and I was like, oh my god, like this is amazing.
It's just so special. The film is just so rich that for people that are like me and you, that are such fans of cinema as more than just like watching a film, it's the experience, it's all the small details, it's all the writing, it's the choice of costumes. It's so exciting to be able to watch this movie, and you can pause every frame of it. That I know they're quite common just now, these like minute-long podcasts, like Star Wars Minute, Alien Minute, like Royal Tenenbaums. You could do like Royal Tenenbaums 10 seconds. There's everything. Every scene is so rich. There's so much going on, and I just think it's a movie that really does reward viewers and fans. It's just incredible.
And it's something that you can watch over and over and over again and pick up something new. It's got so many layers. It's fantastic.
So what about you? What other movies kind of tickled your teenage taste buds?
Well, I think since you're talking about filmmaking and not just watching a movie to watch it, but looking at the costume design and the direction, one thing that really popped in my head was the movie Seven by David Fincher. And we all knew that I was going to be mentioning David Fincher in this podcast.
Of course.
And the thing with Seven, I feel like I might have mentioned this before. I can't remember where, but Seven was one of those movies where this was another film where I didn't quite know who the director was yet. Where I was just watching a movie and I loved the style, I loved everything about it, but I wasn't really hooked on what a director truly does. Like I wasn't young enough to really look at someone's back catalog, or I was too young to look at somebody's back catalog. And with Seven, I had to sneak it because I was way too young to watch this film, but I really wanted to see it because I was a huge Brad Pitt fan. And so I picked it up at the library and I got an old VHS, and I watched it, like I hid it in my room until my parents were gone, and I went downstairs and watched it. And the opening title sequence that was cut to that Nine Inch Nails song, the way that was edited and the way that it was cut to the beat, and the imagery, the smash cuts, the jump cuts, I mean the double exposures, I was just absolutely blown away. I'd never seen a title sequence like that before, and that was the moment that I attribute to me wanting to be an editor. And I said, I was like, I want to make stuff like this. I want to cut things together like this. So that's when I found out like what an editor truly does and what their job is. And I've been an editor ever since. And it's this is that movie that kind of made me realize what career path I wanted to go on.
Yeah, like I can relate. Like I was a student filmmaker for a while, and I remembered like so many of the movies in my teenage years just like inspired me. Like I want to make movies like this. I want to write like this. And this kind of takes me into one of my movies that I remembered when one of my first student films was this movie, and it's hidden away in a box in my room. It was called Knuckle Duster Lovers, and I made a movie. Like I fell in love with the movie Before Sunset, that I remembered I'd never seen Before Sunrise, and I was down in London and I saw the movie poster for Before Sunset of the two of them on the boat, and I thought, I love that image, and I really wanted to see the movie. So I got it in an import from America, and I sat down and I was just blown away by this like second part of a movie to which I hadn't seen the first part. And it was just one of those movies that like I would buy it for friends, or if I remember having a girlfriend when I was like 16, and I bought her like a copy of these movies. Like I just thought they were just so amazing. The characters, the writing, the plotting. It was everything I wanted from life. It was everything I wanted from films. So I remember going to like do this film course here in Edinburgh, and I made a movie that was like a tribute to Before Sunset, where it was about this couple, and the guy really likes this movie Before Sunset, and he uses it as an allegory for their relationship, and the girl doesn't understand that, and she just says that she's not a fan of the film, and then she kind of clicks that the guy is using this film to reach out to her, like the ultimate pretentious nonsense of an 18-year-old. And I remembered my actor dropped out on the day, and I had to do it myself, and I've never shown anyone that movie out with the class. It's sitting in a drawer. But like, it was films like Before Sunset when I was a teenager that inspired me to go study film and filmmaking and make some films for a while. So yeah, it holds a special place in my heart for so many reasons, and it probably is the reason I ended up coming to study in Edinburgh more than another place. I had the opportunity to do this kind of course. I took it. I could easily have gone elsewhere had I studied or taken an interest in something else.
I knew that the Before Sunrise trilogy was going to come up in this conversation if we talked long enough. But I had no idea.
21 minutes it took.
Yeah, 21 minutes, and here we go. And
17 minutes for Fincher. So yeah, we're hitting all the cliches.
Now, I didn't know that you hadn't seen the first one. I had no idea that you saw it out of order.
Yeah, I was just lucky enough to see the second one first, and it still really, really works on its own. But yeah, it was maybe a few months later before I was able to afford another import of Before Sunrise, because we didn't really have them on here on sale in the UK for quite a long time. So yeah, I got this import in and watched it eventually in order, and I've seen it a few times as a trilogy event since. So yeah, Before Sunset certainly played a key role in how I viewed relationships, the world, and things I wanted to do when I was a teenager, like be a filmmaker.
Well, coming next week is going to be the worldwide debut of Knucklebuster Duster Lovers. And
oh god, one day.
All right,
people have tried.
Well, one film that I want to talk about, and which we've talked about on this show a lot, actually, but we won't go in depth about the film, but is Scream, Wes Craven's Scream. That movie, I watched it much later after it came out, because when it first came out, I was too young to watch it, but my sister was really into it. And then once she thought I was old enough, that's when she showed it to me. She's like, "Okay, you're a teenager now. You got to see this film." And she showed me two films. She showed me Scream and Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. And with Scream, it was just so funny because I looked up to my sister, still do. I looked up to my sister a great deal as a young kid, and we're 4 years apart. And so, like when I got into middle school, she got into high school, and so whenever she said, "Okay, now that you're a teenager, or now that you're doing this in your life, now that you're doing that in your life, you got to watch this movie." And when she showed me Scream, I felt like a teenager. Like I was like, this is what being a teenager feels like, looks like, and it's just like watching this movie. That's what I do. I'm a teenager. I watch this movie. I have popcorn. I'm with friends, or I'm with my sister, and we're watching scary movies. And it was just I can't really say much more than that. Is that movie, for lack of a better word, screams my teenage years.
Yeah, I was the same. I went through the Scream experience because I think there's only like a year between us. I experienced Scream quite early on. I think I got to see it on like cable, and I always preferred somewhat Scream 2 because I was a huge Buffy fan as a kid, and the fact that Sarah Michelle Gellar was in it, I was like, oh my god, it's Buffy! She's in Scream! That's so cool, that's great casting. But no, those movies were so cool. I didn't like the third one, but the first two ones, I remembered being at like a barbecue, and Scream 2 was going to be on TV that night for the first time, and I was like, oh my god, I need to get home. And I remember sitting at this family barbecue just like looking at the clock going, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to see Scream 2 tonight. You never know as a kid when you're going to get the chance to see these movies again. And I was like, oh come on, it's going to be on TV tonight, we're going to be late. And I missed like the first like hour of it, so it took a wee while before I managed to see Scream 2 in its entirety.
Oh, that's so funny, because you're right. I mean, like, and even like our generation even had it better than the ones before, because with them, they're like, once it came into theater, that's it. Like maybe you'd see a revival later on, but like it was theater and then nothing. And then with us, at least we had home video, but if it was not everything was available via home video, like you've talked about. And so you had just cable or TV. And if you didn't set your VCR to record it, then like you couldn't trust it. And so if you missed it, you missed it. You would have no idea when you could see it again. And now you could just log on to iTunes and hit buy or rent. And then boom, it's done.
Exactly. It's so easy to romanticize the past. Oh, but at the same time, it was just so equally frustrating as well. So, yeah. But another film that kind of comes to mind, and it's one that we've spoke about off air a few times, is 25th Hour was a huge film for me at the time. I think it was 2002. Like, I was really, really into kind of American politics at the time. I was starting to really take a huge interest into after kind of 9/11, and I remember hearing about this movie 25th Hour, Edward Norton. It was kind of one of the first movies like post 9/11, and I was like, oh, I need to go along and see this movie. And I was so blown away. It was one of those movies where once again you're being open to a new world of like acting, use of cinematography, inventive techniques that you just didn't get when you were younger than like that. And it was just such an impressive movie, and the level of depth and interpretation and memorable scenes, it truly was a special film. And I ended up doing I'd read the book, David Benioff's book on it, now doing Game of Thrones, and I always think, why isn't 25th Hour bigger? The guy is one of the biggest production names on the planet now. And I remember doing my English report on the book, and to this day I watch it every kind of maybe every year and a half, and it's just such a special movie still. It was one of those ones I remembered seeing it on like a bank holiday. I remember traveling through to Aberdeen, and it was the first time I went to the new indie cinema, the Bellman, and it was where you could see all these smaller movies from America and around the world. And sitting in the cinema, and I was in awe of the movie. The scenes were just, wow, this was so raw. It was so powerful. It was like I've been eating processed food for so many years with, for better or worse, Star Wars, Star Trek, all these things. Like I was seeing something that was truly original and unique, and it's still, one of those most important movies I think I ever saw at that age, for not just being a fan of films, but being a fan of cinema.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's definitely on my list too. And you and I actually connected on this film early on in our friendship, where I think I posted like my top 5 films of all time, and 25th Hour was on there, and you're like, hey, whoa, okay, cool. So there's another person who loves this movie. And we started talking, and it's so true. Like I actually read an interesting article, because, like we're recording this September 17th, and we're just a couple days after 9/11, and so an article was written about movies post 9/11. And of course, 25th Hour was on this list. And they talked about how this movie treated 9/11 in a way that no one really did do or has done since, where they didn't treat it like everyone tries to forget that it ever happened, and they go in the opposite direction, where they try to feel like, okay, this happened, but we're going to soldier on. We're going to move on. We're going to be better. We're going to be bigger and greater. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either of those things, but with this film, it acknowledges that it happened, and then they tell their story. They don't try to hide it, and they also don't try to use it for anything other than a mark on this great city. And so I thought that was very interesting. And this was the first movie where I've told this story before, where this is the first movie where I had an extreme physical reaction to it. And I say that literally, and I'm using literally, where I don't understand what happened, but it was after the pummeling scene where Monty gets beaten up by his friends on purpose, and for some reason I started getting woozy in the theater. I just wasn't feeling well, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna go throw up. And I ran out of the theater, went to the bathroom, and I just stood in front of the mirror, and I was as white as a sheet. I mean, all the color was gone. All of a sudden, my head got hot, and then all of a sudden, I could see the color come back to my face. I was like, okay, I feel okay. And then I realized, holy crap, I am missing one of the best movies of the year, and I literally sprinted back and went back to my seat, and I felt fine. I have no idea why I felt that way, except all I can think of is that I was so emotionally invested in this film that it was one of the first films that I just kind of lit into my heart. Not for hyperbole, but I was so in awe of it that I just let it wash over me, and I guess I just got too invested.
I think the movie is like, it's almost like a washing machine, I think, that you go in and it's like this is one day, it's like 24 hours and you're just thrown in and you're just like tumbling around with so many strong and powerful images, emotions and characters. And like, you almost feel that even before, like when you get to the end and like they tease this idea that he could run away and this amazing life he could have and how close it comes to never existing. And then it's pulled away from you. And it is really like, it's just pummels, and even like when you see at the time that it is in the shadow of 9/11, it is in the shadow of the World Trade Center, and all that stuff's still raw in your brain, that it was so intense for so long, all these images, and you come out of it and you just think, wow, you feel like you've been pummeled to death. And I would feel the same way exactly.
Yeah, it's you remember these things when you're a young person. You remember these things. They make marks on you. And one movie I want to talk about, and this I hate, like I love and hate talking about this movie, because when you say the name of this movie, you always get people who kind of roll their eyes going like, oh my god, like, no, Tristan, this is not a good movie, stop talking about it, like this is just a gross teenage movie, just shut up. And that is American Pie.
Yes. I love it.
This movie, like, I don't like gross humor at all. Like, I don't like gross movies. I don't like the stereotypical dick joke movies, and I don't like them whatsoever. But this movie is different. This movie got thrown into the mix of the raunchy modern teenage films that were all about sex and all about how gross we can be, how raunchy can we be, how much can we push the envelope. And so I think that this movie gets miscategorized very, very frequently, because what happened is that I watched this movie because, tons of my friends were talking about it, and they were talking about all this, like all this stupid stuff that was in it. And I was just like, okay, well, I want to see it so I know what these guys are talking about. And then I watched it and I was like, wait, this is well crafted. Like, this is a good, like, this is well made. This is interesting. And I just thought it was so funny and honest at the same time. That's what really, kicked me in the head. Is like, this is an honest portrayal of what it's like to be, and I can't speak for the rest of the world, but to be an American teenage male. Like, it really isn't like, and when I say that, people roll their eyes and go like, oh yeah, do you have a lot of friends who like screwed pies? And we're like, no, okay, take out the obvious hyperbole, take out the obvious slapstick stuff, but like how the guys talk to each other, how they view sex, how they view the opposite sex, and how the opposite sex views them. It is such a real portrayal of American maleness, American teenage maleness, and also on top of that, that's what got me into that movie, is what got me into DVD commentaries. Like, the DVD commentary of that is freaking funny, sometimes funnier than the movie itself. And like, so much that I had a tape recorder where I would record my favorite movie quotes and then just listen to that all day at school, because that's the kind of nerds that we are. And I recorded the entire DVD commentary onto my tape and would listen to just that. And then once, the DVDs came out, I ripped it. And it also taught me a lot about filmmaking, because the directors have gone on to do many great things since then. And this was their first film, though. And so they talked a lot about what a single shot was, and what a two shot was, and what a Steadicam was, and how you would use it, and what, like what reshoots were. Like, they talked about all the stuff that they learned and did. And so it really did teach me a lot about filmmaking.
Yeah, I didn't have it such a huge resonance in that respect with it, but I remember renting it and I watched it and I was in tears watching it. I remember going through to my parents going, this is the funniest movie ever. And I remember just watching it straight again afterwards, because I had to return it the next day. And I remember seeing the second one as a teenager. Me and all my friends went through, oh, here we go, we're going to go see the new American Pie movie. And I actually saw the third one in America. Like, I got to see it a good few months before it came out here. I went to see it with my mum and my younger brother in Palm Springs. So, and I remembered when I went to see the fourth one that it took me back to what it was like. It felt like I was not far off the same age as them in the beginning, and you kind of went on a journey with these characters that when it got to the reunion episode, I was sitting there and I felt quite emotional watching it. It took me back to what it was like to be a teenager, to watch these movies, like the memories that I had with my friends. And even though, yeah, like the culture was slightly different between the UK and America for American Pie, yeah, it still had a bit of resonance. And you thought, yeah, I get this. Like, and it reminded you of some of the good old days and some of the old-fashioned values you had when you were a teenager and what it could be like to be reunited with friends. And I totally agree. It's a very underrated series.
So what else would you say, like, whether it's, informed what you wanted to do in life or informed how you wanted to act or dress or whatever, what was another movie that really just, like, hit you hard as a teenager?
I think one movie I've definitely got, I've mentioned it before, like Sideways was a huge impact. I won't waste everyone's time by going over how much of a huge role that played in my teenage years. You can hear that on about 60,000 filibusters. But I was reminded of it when I was listening to you and the girls' podcast on Christopher Nolan. Like, he played a huge role in my teenage years that I remember wanting to see Memento, and it was out on video, and I was like 14, 15 maybe at the time, and I was on a date, and I can't remember, I think we went to see a film or something, and I went to the Virgin Megastore to buy this video, and they went, no, you're too young, we can't give it to you. And I was like, but I'm 15. They went, no. So we met with my girlfriend's mom, and she ended up buying it for me, and I was like, thank you so much. I remember taking home Memento and just watching it, and I was just blown away by like the techniques, the skills, the acting, the mystery. It was like what you would call like an adult film, and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. So I was hooked into Nolan like early doors, and he was one of those filmmakers I was just like telling my friends, you gotta watch Memento, this film's cool. And I remember the 3-disc edition coming out and being so excited to watch it in chronological order, and like that opened up doors. I remember going to see, I think I was probably the only one ever that went to see Insomnia at the cinema. It was like empty when I went to see it. And then like when this guy was announced to be Batman Begins, he wasn't an unknown element to me. I was like, oh my god, Christopher Nolan, this guy is a great choice. I remember it was between Aronofsky and Nolan, and both of them I was into at the time, and I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever, like telling everyone from the rooftop, you don't know this guy, but he's gonna be brilliant. And I remember going after school with just myself one time, making the trek on the train, like an hour, to go see Batman Begins, and I was so excited to see like a Nolan movie. And like, it's crazy to think that has been like 15 years that I've been into Christopher Nolan, and like that I've gone on like trips to London to see him live and giving talks and all these different movies and like copies of his movies I've bought. Like him, like Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, all these different filmmakers that I got into as a teenager, they're still my go-to people now for movies I want to watch at home, movies that I'm looking forward to on the horizon, and like talking about podcasts on them, that those teenage years really has been so pivotal in where we are now. Yes,
absolutely. And I love that you said that you showed it to friends. You showed Memento to friends, because I did the same exact thing where if we like, I'm sure that you were this way in your group of friends, but I was the movie guy in my group of friends.
Yep.
Like, I had the collection, I had the knowledge, I had the catalog where like I could just like in my head going like, oh yeah, no, 1998, totally, you need to go here, and so Memento was the movie that I showed friends where I would say like, oh no, yeah, guys, you haven't seen this, you got to check this out. Memento is the movie that I would show girls to show them how edgy I was and how evolved I was, because I could explain all the techniques behind what they did and why they did what they did, and it was just, and yeah, it was it totally got them interested in me. But yeah, it's so funny because like I'm hearing so many similar stories from you that like I had in my life, and Memento was definitely it. Like, it was just so we keep saying the word original over and over again. It was so just the word, it was so delightfully original, because even at that young of an age, you and I both realized, yes, Star Wars is awesome. Yes, Star Wars is cool. Yes, Bond is great. These blockbusters are fantastic. Let's go see Independence Day. But at the same time, the movies that you want to watch over and over again, or that make you think, are Memento and Seven, and stuff by Fincher and Nolan and Anderson and everything like that. Like a movie that has layers and that someone carefully crafted every single shot and every single character, not just like, let's have the biggest set pieces with the biggest explosions. And one movie that kind of bridged that gap for me between huge blockbusters and cinematic masterpiece when I was a young person was Gladiator. I
Excellent choice.
was obsessed with Gladiator, truly and honestly. There is still a poster of it downstairs in my parents' basement. Like, I had tons and tons of movie posters that I got from Blockbuster when they didn't use them anymore. They were selling them cheap for like 50 cents. And so I got as many as I could and decorated the walls. And Gladiator was one of the first ones I got. And I remember driving home with my parents because even though it was rated R film, my parents came, like, and I was way too young to, because it came out in 99 or 2000, something like that. And
2000, I think?
2000. And so I was 14. So old enough to know better, but still too young to go see it on my own. And my parents were just like, no, Tristan, you have to go see this film. Like, you like, you will love this the most. Like, you like, even though you're too young to see it, the violence actually isn't that bad. And I remember like coming home on the car and being able to quote entire sections of the movie to my parents, and they were just kind of blown away. They're like, you just saw this and you just gave us the entire Maximus Decimus Meridius quote and speech. And as soon, like, that was actually the first DVD I ever bought was Gladiator, because that's when DVDs started becoming popular, and that's when they started mass producing them. And I just watched it over. I was
going to say the exact same thing. We got it from Costco, Gladiator.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I wrote down I wrote down my favorite time codes, like my favorite parts of the movie. I would write down my favorite time codes, because DVD had this amazing feature where if you hit time and then type in the time, it would take you to that exact portion of the movie. And so I did that over and over and over again.
What a time to be alive that was. I remember Gladiator. We bought Gladiator and Vertical Limit on DVD from the Costco. You know, Gladiator and that movie will always play a special role because you were so excited to have special features. You would watch every single one of the special features. Now you watch, I'll watch a couple or I'll get round to it in a few months. Now, like, it was that age, like, oh, it's all this extra content. I've got to watch it. And yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of start to wrap up for the day on this lovely nerdy note of time codes. Thank you so much for filling in for Matt today, Tristan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This was it's always a nice trip down memory lane.
I think I'm going to die another day out of the DVD player and maybe watch that tonight.
Well, before we go, I would like to say just a few things, because I mentioned this on the other pod. I mentioned this on Nerd Nuptial. But one thing that you guys should know is that we are now partners with a great news site called nerdsandbeyond.com. Everyone should go to it, bookmark it, follow them on Twitter, Nerds and Beyond. They have fantastic news, and the thing that I love most about them is that they are quick and to the point articles where it's like, here are the links you need to have, this is the information you need to know. No clickbait, no nothing, no overly flowery language. It's just when there's so much news content out there, specifically nerd news content out there, it's easy to get lost in the flowery language. This one is to the point. Go to nerdsandbeyond.com. You can go to it from our website at thenerdparty.com and click on news. You can also find our shows on their website now at nerdsandbeyond.com, and then click on podcasts. And one other place that you should go is lootcrate.com/nerdparty. Go to that link. It is so cool. We already have had so many listeners sign up for it, and we've gotten some positive feedback saying, like, this is great, this is fun. And it is a geek box service where you'll get $40 worth of merchandise for less than $20. We're talking Pop Funkos, t-shirts, comic books, action figures, all this cool license. Exclusives. You get a lot of exclusive stuff that you can only get through them. And so what you need to do is to save some money. And actually, if you enter in right now, you'll have a chance to win a free iPhone 7 and help out the network. Go to lootcrate.com/nerdparty and enter in the code NERDPARTY at checkout. That last part's very important.
It's payday soon enough for some people. It's definitely worth treating yourself to. I've seen a few friends post their hauls on like Instagram and YouTube videos that there's a hell of a lot of great stuff in there. So yeah, listen to Tristan. Definitely get that offer while you can. So Tristan, if people wanted to hear you and your other podcasts, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on elsewhere on the network on a show called Nerd Nuptial, which is a show that I host with my wife, where we talk about all things geek, but from a married perspective, because my wife is just as big of a nerd as I am. And you can also find me on the Trek FM network on To The Journey, which is a Star Trek Voyager podcast. And you can find me online on Twitter at The Insane Robin.
there you go. People will be able to find you here, there, and everywhere. So yes, thank you so much for coming today. And if you want to find me, I'm Lee_Nostromo, and I'm sure me and Matt will be back together in a couple weeks to discuss some other wonderful, amazing film topic. So tune in then. But next week the Senate floor will be back, so check that out for Matt and Tristan as well. So thank you so much for having us today, and yeah, I'll see you down at Teenage Memory Lane.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.